Hey everyone, this is James here, bringing you another video. Today I am going to be talking about Umberto Lenzi's Gialli. So as you might expect, as I brought on a couple of his Giallis onto recent episodes. So he's a really interesting director. He's bounced around quite a lot of genres, so if you're a fan of Italian genre films in general, he has dabbled in quite a few. I would say probably the two big ones. Well, there's more. Like, he's done some zombie films, he's done some cannibal films, he's done some polizioteschi, spaghetti westerns, slashers, Conan the Barbarian ripoffs, macaroni combat films. So he's done just about all of the different genres that you could do if you worked in Italian genre film from like the 60s all the way into the 90s. So he worked quite a bit longer than those that just kind of worked during that peak period, which has led to, he has quite a body of work that you can sort of go in and take a look at. And I'd say the two big genres that he probably directed the most films in are the polizioteschi and the Gialli. Personally, I lean a little bit more towards his polizioteschi work. I think that suits his strengths as a filmmaker a little more than the Gialli does. Nevertheless, I do like his Gialli. And when you're talking about the different Gialli creators and directors, if you're kind of looking for your top four, I don't think you're going to see Umberto Lenzi on that list. I think that's reserved for people like Argento, Bava, Martino, and Fulci. But I think if you're to expand that list a little bit more, I think he's someone that you would definitely see mentioned there. And that's, I think, partly because he, not because he made a singular great Gialli. In fact, I think you're going to find a lot of division as to what is his best Giallo. But he directed quite a few of them, and I think most of them are, if not all of them, are, very watchable and very entertaining. So if you like a lot of those genre tropes, I think they're interesting. And the interesting thing about his Gialli is he directed all 8 of them between 1969 and 1975. So that's a relatively short span, but that's pretty much the entire span of kind of like that Gialli, Filone, the life cycle of the Gialli. And so the ones that he directed early on especially, were directed pre-Bird with the Crystal Plumage. And as many of you know, even though Blood and Black Lace and the Bava films came before that, it's Bird with the Crystal Plumage and the Argento wave that really kind of waved in this Bacchus killer and a lot of what people associate with Gialli. So the fact that he had a couple before are kind of wavering these different influences, things like Diabolique, which, I think you could say influenced some of those Golden Age Gialli too, but a little bit less obvious. And I've seen a couple people make this reference too, of more towards kind of that subjective point of view horror that Polanski did. And I think for the most part, Lenzi was not the best at any of these, but sometimes an imitator is still very worth checking out. So I can definitely see those different perspectives as well. And I would say I like but don't love just about every Umberto Lenzi Gialli film. And for me, at least, I think his main strengths are when he can really go all the way, and I think that's most well suited towards something like the polizioteschi genre. My favorite, personally, from him is Almost Human in that, and also probably why he's well known for the cannibal genre, which is one of those genres that's not really known for a lot of restraint necessarily. There's a certain mean-spirited misanthropy to his work that really plays better when he's going full exploitation. I think while he can be, a decent stylist, I think compared to perhaps the best Gialli directors, the people that really are able to put these rich canvases on screen, people like Argento and Bava, and Fulci's strengths I think are a little different, but nevertheless, I think he is someone that just kind of puts it all out there on the screen, and he's not quite as stylistic and as thoughtful as some of these other directors. But I think if you're a fan of kind of like the nice settings of Gialli, a lot of Lenzi's Giallis in particular, specifically the earlier ones with Carol Baker, have a lot of like these jet set lifestyle ones, so richer, upper class, and that's always kind of fun to see too. So a lot of them is just kind of like soaking in the different settings. He's worked with Morricone a couple times, so just having these great scores and stuff like that. So if you like Italian genre films in the 70s, I suspect that people will at least be a little bit soft towards the Lenzi films. And then the later ones, of course, some of them come very much in that kind of Argento mode. So if you like those kinds of Argento style Giallis, which there are certainly a lot of them coming in, especially the early 70s after The Bird with the Crystal Plumage and the Animal trilogy came out, I think there's a lot of those there to chew on as well. But yeah, again, my favorite of his is sort of the Poliziotteschi's. So going to be walking through these different Giallis, and as I said, there are 8 of them. But I wanted to tier it a bit, like you sort of can for other directors, but I think it's a little challenging when it comes to Lenzi, just because a lot of them I grade just very, very similarly. And so I haven't rewatched absolutely everything. I've seen all of these at least once, most of them twice. My least favorite, personally, is A Quiet Place to Kill, and so this is the Carol Baker, John Sorrell collaboration. I just found this to be a bit boring, even though it has good atmospheres and sets. So I kind of put that in tier C, which is just a little bit below tier B, which is where I put all of the other Umberto Lenzi ones. So I'm going in a very, very rough order here. Depending on the day, I could definitely kind of be persuaded to switch this around. Okay, so first up I had, so number 7, after A Quiet Place to Kill, is Oasis of Fear. This is the Ray Lovelock one. It's post-Bird, but it kind of has that similar earlier feel to it, of more kind of like this anxiety around like class and hippies and that sort of thing. And so it's a little more psychological rather than being like a body count film like the post-Argento could lean into. And it's fine. It's just not quite my favorite. Knife of Ice is another one. I actually like this one a fair bit. This is a post-Bird Carol Baker one, so in that sense it's a little different from the other ones. Not quite as sleazy as his other films, and I think it just doesn't quite have enough of the to really put it up in there. Next up in the 4-5 category, I have basically the 2 Argento, the very, very Argento-inspired ones. So Eyeball and 7 Bloodstain Orchids. I think these both are nice kill films. So 7 Bloodstain, Eyeball in particular is one of those where it's like, okay, I know I'm going to go into this great Barcelona setting and I'm going to get a nice, or at least a somewhat satisfying set piece every 15 minutes. Are they the best in the business? No, not necessarily. But it has a lot of those genre absurdities, and Barcelona, for me at least, it's a fun city to just kind of chill out and hang out. And most amusingly, as I talked about in my Eyeball episode too, is the tourists are all from Burlington, Vermont, which is one of the most random WTF strange references you would ever get in kind of like this 1974, 1975 Italian genre film. And then we have 7 Bloodstained Orchids, of course, which is very clearly inspired by Bird. I think it's a little more uneven, but I think the highs are a little bit higher. I actually like Antonio Sabato. I think he's pretty well suited towards Lenzi. Not a good actor, but one that's a chronic overactor. And so in that sense, it's, you can really go over the top. Like the Poliziotteschi, I like him in from Lenzi too, as the Gang Wars of Milan. I did a video on that, I think, a year or so ago. So yeah, that's one that's, I think, a little more uneven than Eyeball, but I think the highs are a little bit better, and I do like it just a touch more. Next up is another Baker and Lenzi collaboration, Paranoia, Orgasmo, a little more psychological. So I put this and So Sweet, So Perverse together in kind of that 2-3 category. So Sweet, So Perverse, very much one of those Gialli, very influenced by Diabolique. It's a little tamer than his most extreme work, but it has this crazy, ridiculous elements that I do find to be quite fun, and I also am quite a fan of the cast. Of course, you have Carol Baker there, and you have the great French actor Jean-Louis Triguenet that plays the Great Silence. So I really like the Great Silence, but he's one of those actors that's probably a little overqualified, perhaps, to appear even in one of these films, but he's nonetheless quite appreciated. And number 1, and I moved these around quite a bit before going to it, but I'm going to put Spasmo up there. It's got a great Morricone score. I think it's perhaps the most interestingly lensed one. Does the story make a lot of sense? Is it particularly well put together? Maybe not, but it has like some great nighttime shooting. You have great kind of Italian character actors, Ivan Rasimov. I'm not a huge Robert Hoffman fan, but he's in there too. You have Susie Kendall. You have some great stuff with mannequins going on, and it's also just quite a bit different from the mode. So this one comes at the very tail end of the Gialli cycle, but it's not really in that Argento mode in the same way that something like 7 Bloodstain Orchids and Eyeball are. So I think some people, especially if you are going for kind of that standard Gialli, you might find Spasmo to be a bit unsatisfying. I, on the other hand, find it to be a little bit more refreshing, certainly on this next the rewatch I did last month. And I think it's a perfectly fine, enjoyable film that leans more heavily into the psychological in a time when Gialli wasn't necessarily leaning as heavily into that. So, and I think it also is probably some of the better stylizations that he's done. So again, not a body count film like some of the Argento inspired ones, but I think it is quite enjoyable. Okay, so that is from 8 to 1. Honestly, 1 through 7, and honestly maybe even 8, could very well be rearranged. The quality of these Gialli, I think, is fairly close together. So I don't think Spasmo, even though I listed as the best, I don't think that's even in my top 10 Gialli necessarily. But you know, a lot of these I can certainly enjoy, and I've enjoyed rewatching quite a few of them over the course of a few years too. So yeah, Lenzi, and I do hope to continue to talk about him a little bit. Going to be talking about at least one of his Polizioteschis, and wanted to do a similar episode to this, ranking his Polizioteschi films, a genre that I think he is perhaps even more well suited towards. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Let me know what your Lenzi Gialli list looked like. I was kind of surprised just going through it how different his Giallis are. You kind of have those Baker and Lenzi ones that rub together, but other than that, they are kind of interesting and diverse, and they are even interesting and diverse within the Baker and Lenzi. There's just a couple of them that I struggle a little bit to separate in my head. Part of which is I watched them very, very close together when I was first watching these films too. Okay, so thank you all for tuning in. Let me know how you like this episode. I will see y'all next time. Cheers.